In a quiet, sun-drenched village nestled between dusty hills and whispering trees, there lived a girl named Amina. She was just 17, gentle in voice, graceful in steps, and filled with quiet dreams of a life far beyond the narrow paths of her village. But life had not been gentle with her family. Her father, once a proud farmer, had watched helplessly as his crops failed season after season. Droughts came like curses, debts piled like stones on his back. Each morning, he woke up with one question haunting his soul. How do I feed my family today? And when survival became too heavy a burden, he made a choice, a devastating one. He arranged for Amina to be married, not out of love, not out of happiness, but for money. The man was rich, respected, a businessman known in town as Alhaji Sule. Twice Amina's age, with a voice like thunder and eyes that rarely smiled. But he had what her father needed: wealth, influence, and a promise that Amina would never go hungry again. No one asked Amina what she wanted. She overheard the deal late one night. Hidden behind a curtain, her heart broke silently as her father's voice trembled. "Just help me. She's a good girl. Take care of her. She'll obey you." The next morning, Amina did not cry. She sat beneath the mango tree and looked up at the sky. She tried to imagine a different life, but her imagination now felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Her mother tried to smile as they dressed her in the wedding fabric, a deep red lace, heavy with embroidery and pain. "You'll be okay," she whispered, tying the gela head wrap with trembling hands. "You're strong, strong like your grandmother." But strength didn't stop the ache in Amina's chest. The village celebrated. Drums echoed through the trees, women danced, men sang praises, but Amina's eyes held no joy, only questions, only silence. The ceremony was quick. Her hand was placed in his. Alhaji Sula said the vows with confidence, while Amina repeated them in a voice barely above a whisper. She didn't hate him. She didn't know how to hate. But she felt like a leaf being carried away by a river she never chose to enter. That night, when the guests left and the lights dimmed, Amina sat quietly in the corner of the large unfamiliar room that was now her new home. Everything smelled expensive, but nothing felt like home. There was no welcome, no warmth, just servants moving like shadows, and her husband seated in silence, already caught up in phone calls and business talks. Days passed. Amina became a stranger in her own skin. She woke up early, dressed neatly, and served tea without being told. She spoke only when spoken to. She prayed silently at night, whispering to the stars, asking them if they had ever heard the voice of a girl like her. She didn't wish for riches. She didn't wish for escape. She just wished to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, not as property, but as a person. Little did she know, fate had started writing a different story for her, one that would slowly turn her tears into strength and her silence into something beautiful. But for now, Amina was still the bride with no choice, waiting in the shadows of a life she never asked for. Time passed in slow, heavy footsteps for Amina. Each day in Alhaji Sule's mansion was like a quiet echo of the one before. Silent corridors, distant conversations, and the dull rhythm of duty. She wasn't mistreated. She was fed, clothed, given everything money could buy. Yet she felt emptier than ever. It was the kind of emptiness that couldn't be filled with fine clothes or golden furniture. It was the emptiness of being invisible. Until one afternoon, something changed. It was the sound of a car engine, unfamiliar to her ears. The staff hurried about, whispering, "He's arrived, Alhaji's nephew." There was tension in their steps, but also curiosity. His name was Idris, a university graduate, quiet, reserved. He had studied abroad and returned to Nigeria for a while to handle some family matters. He wasn't like the others, not loud, not commanding. His presence was calm, almost unnoticed, until his eyes met Amina's for the first time. It happened near the small library in the main house. Amina had been asked to tidy up. She moved carefully, unsure if she was even supposed to be in there. She reached for a stack of books and they slipped, tumbling to the floor with a loud thud. Her heart froze. She crouched quickly, gathering the books with trembling hands, knowing she would be scolded or, worse, reported for being careless. But then a shadow knelt beside her. A gentle hand reached out to help. No harsh words, no cold stares, just a quiet voice. "It's all right, let me help you." She looked up, startled. It was him, Idris. His eyes weren't filled with judgment. They held something else, something she hadn't seen in a long time: kindness. From that moment, something began to shift. He didn't speak much to her at first, just a polite nod in the hallway, a soft thank you when she brought tea, or a small gesture of help when she struggled with heavy trays. But unlike everyone else in the mansion, Idris saw her. He noticed when she was tired. He noticed the sadness in her eyes, and slowly, cautiously, he began to ask questions, simple, respectful, gentle. Do you like flowers? Have you always lived in the village? Do you read much? At first, Amina only gave short answers, unsure if it was a trick or a test. She had been taught to speak little, keep her head down, but Idris never demanded. He simply listened. In the stillness of the garden one evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, she finally asked him back, "Why are you kind to me?" Idris smiled, "Because kindness doesn't cost anything, and you deserve it." Amina blinked, holding back tears she didn't understand. No one had told her she deserved anything in a very long time. From that day, their bond grew, not in loud declarations, but in silent glances, brief conversations, and shared moments that no one else seemed to notice. One day, Amina laughed, a real laugh. It was over a silly story Idris told her about getting lost during his first week abroad. She clapped her hand over her mouth, shocked by the sound. She hadn't laughed like that in years. And Idris looked at her, not like a servant, not like a burden, but like a human being, like someone worthy of joy. For the first time since her forced marriage, Amina felt a tiny light within her, a spark. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was hope. And that sometimes is even more powerful. By the time the rainy season returned, Amina's life had changed in ways she couldn't explain, even to herself. She still wore the title of wife, still moved through the mansion like a shadow, but her heart no longer felt completely cold. Idris had become a quiet source of light in her world. He never overstepped, never whispered promises. But in his presence, Amina felt like more than someone's forgotten bride. She felt like herself again, like the girl who used to dream under mango trees. They spoke often now, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes while she watered the plants. He brought her books, she brought him food. They never planned these moments. They simply happened. And then, one evening, it happened. Amina stood on the rooftop terrace, looking at the stars. Idris joined her, holding 2 mugs of warm tea. They didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, "I don't know what your heart's been through, Amina, but I want you to know this. You are not invisible. You are not small. You are not forgotten." Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from relief. No one had ever said those words to her, not even her mother. That night, she allowed herself to cry freely, not in secret, not in silence, but in front of someone who truly saw her. But not everyone was blind to this growing bond. Alhaji Sula noticed the change, the brightness in Amina's eyes, the strength returning to her voice. He became colder, harsher, jealous perhaps, possessive. Amina began to feel watched. The house, once dull, now felt dangerous. She knew something had to change, and so did Idris. One night, with quiet urgency in his eyes, he told her, "You don't belong to anyone, Amina. You are allowed to choose your own future. Let me help you, not because I pity you, but because I believe in you." She hesitated. Leaving would mean scandal, shame, risk. But staying meant losing herself again. So she made the bravest decision of her life. That same night, with only a small bag and her beating heart, she left. Idris was waiting, not with a car full of riches, but with the keys to freedom. They didn't run to a palace. They found a small apartment in a quiet town where no one knew their names. Amina enrolled in school, her eyes lighting up every time she picked up a pen. Idris worked simple jobs, tutoring, delivery, whatever he could find. And every evening, they sat together, sharing meals and laughter, not as master and servant, not as savior and saved, but as 2 people learning to heal. They married, yes, but it was nothing like her first wedding. No crowd, no drums, just quiet vows spoken from the heart. And when Idris said, "I choose you freely forever," Amina smiled with a joy that came from deep, hard-earned peace. She was no longer the girl who was sold. She was the woman who found love, the kind that money can't buy, tradition can't arrange, and time can't erase. True love doesn't always begin with fireworks or fairy tales. Sometimes it begins in silence, in pain, but when it's real, it heals. And Amina, she was no longer a bride with no choice. She was a woman with her own voice.